There we go.
You just start
Sorry.
with the first one. That's right. So yeah, so we often give, don't we? We give a lot in our work. We come to this because we care. You know, when we care, caring makes us feel emotionally vulnerable, or well, we are emotionally vulnerable when we care, and that's a good thing. We don't want our protective parts to shut that down and to harden. We want to stick with our empathy. Like our empathy is about our shared humanity, and we can't risk losing that. So we do have to look after ourselves, and you know, and this work does. You know, there is a cost to us, isn't there, for this work? And it's not, this isn't just an intellectual project. And whichever services or things that we're, places that we're working in, it isn't just an intellectual project. We bring our hearts and our souls to it, don't we? And, you know, the change making, it lives in our nervous system, it lives in our identities, our values, our lived experiences. And so that's why change work, I'm going to call it broadly change work, is emotional labor. Yeah, it's emotional work, isn't it? So well-being is not optional, it's absolutely necessary. And we do have a responsibility to think about the state that we're coming in to work in. You know, how can we be in a state which helps us to bring clarity and creativity and all the best parts of us to that work? It's not optional. Yeah, it's not optional really. It's part, looking after ourselves is what makes this work possible, because we are the tools. So in the relation and approach to mental health that we do, we talk a lot about Kung Fu Panda. He gets the dragon's scroll, and he sees it's just a reflective surface, like a mirror. And the answer to like limitless power is in this mirror. It's similar to the Wizard of Oz, right? What's at the, you know, who's wearing the ruby slippers? Well, you are wearing the ruby slippers. Like if you look in the mirror, the power is within you. It reflects you back because you are the tools. It's you that's important. It's our relationships that we build with people that allows people to uncover the blocks in their lives. Um, and so how we are, what state we're in really does matter. Can you do the next one, Pete, for me?
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. So without making us feel too weary about this, it's just a like reality check, isn't it? It's like that when we're we're working alongside trauma, we're working alongside injustice, we're working alongside complexity and moral complexity of the lot of the time, that inevitably has an impact on us. And if we're functioning from that part where we're, you know, in our, some people might call that their wise mind, some people might, in a spiritual tradition, might think about that as their soul. Whatever you want to call it is all right, but that kind of core part of us that can work from a calm place of clarity and compassion and creativity, or the good C words. If we can do that, then we can bear the suffering of the people around us, of the world, of the planet. We can do that. But what conditions do we need to be able to get there to manage this? And we're working and hearing like really difficult things every day, and working and walking alongside people in that. Over time, there is the potential, isn't there, for that to cause like chronic stress, you know, emotional exhaustion, and to have an impact on our bodies as well. Um, and our bodies will show us where we're struggling if we're not paying attention, won't they? You know, migraines might take us out, pain might take us out, and say that's enough now. You need a break from this. If we're not really listening to our hearts and our minds, our bodies will try and find a way to tell us that. Burnout is really, this is really important. And I think people that have heard me do these webinars before know I draw on Vicky Reynolds, who's a social worker, Canadian social worker and systemic therapist, and she talks a lot about burnout, but not as a personal failure. And that's really important, isn't it? It's not a personal failure, it's a context, right? Burnout becomes inevitable when the systems can't support us, when we're you know, when the resources are scarce, when we don't have what we need, we don't have the leadership we need, we don't have the resources we need to do our work, when we're faced with structural violence, injustice, when we're faced with that again and again, burnout becomes inevitable, and it isn't about personal failure. And that's really important to remember. Thanks, Pete. So I think most of us at work here will probably be working from a trauma-informed lens. And in Wales, we've got the trauma framework and ambition to become a trauma-informed nation. Well, a trace trauma and ACE-informed nation. Um, and yeah, just like encourage people to do that U-turn and think about how we're applying that to ourselves as well, because we can be very good at kind of having a lot of empathy for others who we recognize might be operating from survival, in survival mode and survival responses. And we also do need to do that U-turn and recognize when we might be operating from that position as well, when our colleagues might be, give them the benefit of the doubt where we need to, and think about how these principles apply to us in our teams, in our organizations, and individually. So we all need safety, don't we? We need physical safety. Trauma-informed work would be thinking about the physical environment, but you think about where have you got to work from? What's your office space like? What would make that even 1 degree more comfortable for you? What might change there that might make that feel a more welcoming, kinder space to be in? And emotionally, like how we connect with people, how can we feel that we can bring all the parts of ourselves, not just our high performing, overachieving, or cynical, burnt out parts, like that. How can we bring all of it and know that that's accepted, and that people will just give us what we need. Now, so if we turn up to the office and you're not feeling 100% okay, people know you well enough to know that that might be an off day for you, and just kind of work around you to make that as comfortable as possible, so you can be in a position to change that state for yourself. And that's safety, isn't it? Like when people know us well enough to know when we're having an off day and when we're not, to welcome us, to pay attention to us, to witness and validate what we're doing, what we're trying, when things have gone well, when things are not going so well. We also need predictability, we need boundaries, we need routines, don't we? We need things to be largely predictable throughout our day, and that's what creates a sense of safety for us as well. We need choices. We need to not be micromanaged for a start. We need to have, we can't just have all the responsibility with no control. If we're having responsibility in our work and in our lives, that goes hand in hand with control, doesn't it? We can't have someone else take control of something but us feel completely responsible. We need to have some choices about, where we're going, what our future, what we want to learn, all of those things. And we need connection. We need connection with our teams. We need connection to our purpose and our sense of why we're doing this kind of work. Sometimes it's about reconnecting with that and going back to that. Why am I here? What are we doing? So that when you have those days that I definitely did in the office yesterday, with it, I think there was definitely a moment when we all said, oh my goodness, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why are we're on the receiving end of not always compassionate interactions from others? And you need to feel okay about that, don't you? You need to feel like, I know that there's a greater purpose here. I know why I'm doing this. I know, and I can survive the difficult days because of that. Thanks, Pete. So relational practice as protection. So I guess, in Platform especially, we know, and that's what we're working towards, this idea that we heal in relationship with others, we heal in community, we rarely heal individually. And that's not to say that we might not have a healing journey or recovery journey, whatever you would like to call it, individually, before we can connect with others. That might be part of it, but really the magic happens in community with others. And when we can see that shared humanity, when we can see that it's not just us, and can see that with help from others, that there's room to change the story, isn't there? That trauma-informed work is about asking that, isn't it? What's happened to us, and what's the story we tell ourselves about that? And that's the bit that's open to change, right? So when we're struggling with work and struggling with everything that we're doing, just thinking, what story am I telling myself about this? Am I telling myself a story about this being me inadequate, or I'm not meant for this, or maybe this isn't the right team for me? What's the story I'm telling myself about that? And with other people, how can I make sense of that and maybe what are the opportunities to see things differently, to not just look internally at my own failings, but think about the system that I'm in, what I'm not responsible for entirely, and that's things I'm accountable for, but forces that will have shaped where you are at the moment. So I mean, that for us is everything about being in relationship with others in a compassionate way, going to curiosity before you go to control. Yeah, what might this be about? How has it come to be this way? And rejecting that individualized blame. Yeah, because blame doesn't really take us anywhere good ever, does it? If we blame ourselves or blame others, think about your own lives. When has someone blaming you ever made your life better? Or you blaming yourself, when does that ever improve things? Really, it probably hasn't, is it? It's like when we understand that what we're doing our best, and that we have these parts of us that might leap to control quite quickly, and that's a normal human thing. But if we stay there, then we lose our curiosity. If we lose our curiosity, then we can't get to empathy very easily. Right? You think curiosity is the route to empathy, isn't it? So what's going on for me right now? What's being activated? Am I in survival mode? Am I operating from fight? Why am I always feeling inadequate? Or why am I always blaming that other team, thinking, oh, if only they just picked that up, or if they did that bit, or if they accepted that referral, this would all be fine. What state am I in? Where am I operating from? What parts are being hurt? What vulnerable parts am I trying to protect? And what's going on around me? Are my circumstances all right? Am I helping everybody else around me? But actually, I feel like I've personally got some instability in my life, or something that isn't quite right, or my needs are not being met in a certain way, and it makes it hard to do this. So it's just that, it's hard to do that work, that reflection. It's that on our own. We need to do it together, don't we? We need to say we're in this together as a shared project. And we've got another webinar that's on boundaries that we've done previously. So I could talk for ages on this, but boundaries are like absolutely about ethical practice. They aren't a nice to have. They are really important. When we know our limits, we don't step into that like hero, lone wolf type roles, and neither do we slip into or allow others in our team to slip into that cynical, burnt out, harden my heart type role. And we bring each other in. We recognize when we're coming to the edges. We recognize when we're reaching our limits, and we impose limits, don't we, on what we can do. We don't overextend to offer people the earth when we're not able to follow through, for example. And so seeing solidarity as a well-being strategy, just as we would the people that we work with, recognizing the injustices, the oppression, the inequality that filters down into individual mental health. We recognize that for ourselves too, and we have solidarity with each other in this work. We recognize when there are things that we can't change, but we work, don't we? We do what we can on the ground, day to day. Each individual relationship we have has a ripple effect, doesn't it? If we can lend some of our good energy, our calm, nervous system state to others, and that eventually ripples out. It's recognizing that. Thanks, Pete. So what does belonging look like in teams, right? So I really draw on Owen Eastwood's ideas here. So he's written a book called Belonging, there's loads of YouTube videos about him. I think he's great, and it really resonates with me because I work really from an attachment perspective. So thinking about relationships with someone that's got your back, and how we are in those early relationships in our childhood shape our experience of relationships later on, and our experience of being in a team. And he I don't think he called himself a high performance coach anymore. I think he's got a problem with that word, high performance, but he has worked with like lots of sports teams nationally, like I'm going to say Harlequins, but sorry for the Welsh rugby people here, but the Harlequins, and he's worked with other organisations like NATO and the Royal Ballet, and what it boils down to for him, and I completely agree, is that if you work on belonging in a team, then everything else follows. If you work on your sense of belonging and giving people really clear cues that they belong in this team, in this organisation, then performance will follow. You don't need to work on that. If you get this right, if you can and I think that's right. A lot of the work that we do and the relationships that we build with people that we work with, if we can we're trying to see their gifts, their capacities, their strengths, their resources all of the time. And when they're able to see that, when they're able to see themselves in a little bit in the way that we can see those strengths, then everything else follows. So I might not be working on, budgeting in relation to tenancy. I might be actually just helping someone feel okay about themselves, and then all of that will take care of itself. Not always, but that's the principles, isn't it? So if we help people to feel seen, valued, significant. So when we work in the prison, we're letting people, one of the things that we do with the new prison officers is ask people to go round and say, what does it mean to the people you care about that for you to be here? Like, what does it mean to them that you're becoming a prison officer? And then sharing those stories, it's really building a bond between everyone in that ritualistic way of everyone being heard and having their part of their personal story heard. But it is all, building that sense of belonging to something as well, like something that's meaningful to you. So it's know that you belong and what you belong to. Yeah, what are you joining here? What really matters to us in this team, and what are we going to hold really dearly and closely to our hearts here? So he talks about he draws on Maori culture, and I think he's from New Zealand. I think part of his family's from New Zealand, and he talks about that being in this idea of lineage and a sense of being in this unbroken and unbreakable chain of people. So the people that came before you stand arms locking with them, and the people that will come next to you, imagine yourself standing interlocking with them. And the sun is on you at the moment. I mean, how can we do our best? And it might not be that everything was perfect in the past, but how can we change that for now and be our most accountable and do our best work now, knowing that then what we've got to leave. When we have that sense of ourselves in that longer line, often our sense of purpose changes, and that changes our well-being as well. In Wales, we have the Future Generations Act, and we really have our eye, don't we, on future generations and everything that we're doing now. What is that going to mean for the future for people? When we can work from that position, that also changes our well-being. Thanks, Pete. I realise I've probably got 2 minutes left, haven't I? But that's okay.
That's all right. Carry on. We've got time.
Okay. So, yeah. So trauma and culture, pay attention to culture, isn't it? And culture is just with that. Well, what's that? It's like the air that we breathe, isn't it? It's like the way things are. Yeah. And being a bit more intentional about that then. If you think, well, culture is just this is the way things happen here. Okay, does it need to happen here like that? Is that how we want? Are we happy with that? Are we committing to that? Being a bit intentional about the way things are, and recognizing that there is an impact, isn't there, of all of these things: chaos, silo, scarcity. But that doesn't change. We'll continue to work in silos unless we really think about our communication with other teams and other parts of the organization and other people, unless we are brave enough to reach out to others and make a connection. And we want to move from fearful to safe cultures. That's not easy. I say that, so it's really easy. And Pete and Phil will talk a little bit about that in a bit, but that it isn't easy, is it? Of course not. But that's where we want that sort of psychological safety, don't we? Where we can make mistakes and be human and know that that's okay, when we can bring all of ourselves. Okay, Pete? Can you just move on? Thanks. So we want to develop our reflective capacity, and that will have an impact on our well-being and the people that we work with. So reflective, I think most of us will be used to this idea of reflective practice. It is literally practicing reflection, isn't it? It's slowing down and stopping and thinking about our work. But I also know how easy it is for that to fall off the radar. It is really hard to develop reflective practice groups and keep them going. There's all sorts of difficulties that come with that. But reflective practice doesn't need to just be that. It's not just reflective practice groups, although they can be extremely helpful and really recommend them. It is just about how you are day to day, isn't it? It's about whether you come back to the office and someone says, how was that? And you stop and you actually go, instead of just going, oh yeah, a bit rubbish, or really annoying or whatever, you actually stop and take the chance to chat just for a minute about how was it for you, that visit. And then when we invite people to do that, when we really look up from our work to say, I know you were having that visit earlier, how was it? That's reflection, that's slowing down. It's managing our overwhelm. It's shifting from, okay, what part of me is operating from that was really frustrating. I can't believe they're not doing this, that, or the other, to what's going on there. Why can't they do that? What are the blocks? What are the barriers? In a sense, it's thinking about the what ifs as well, isn't it? It's thinking, what if we did it like this? What if we did it like that? It just takes a little bit of time to slow down to do that. And we need other people sometimes to help us do that thinking. But it doesn't need to always be in an organized way. It can just be our day to day. Thanks, Pete. So I guess it's just an invitation, isn't it, to everybody here to think about these things. What is it that's draining you, and what is it that's sustaining you in your work that you're doing? What do you want more of, and what do you want less of? Maybe you know that already. Maybe that's obvious. Maybe it's not. I would also be thinking as well about what parts of you get activated, and can you slightly separate that from you? So I have a part, it might be that I have a part that's really overworked. I have a part that's really striving. I have a part that's being really cynical. I have a part that's being really feels in despair. Like, that's not all of you. Those are different parts of you that are experiencing different things. When we can just take that little bit of separation from ourself for the parts of us, things can change a little bit. Think about that with other people. If we think about them as operating in multiplicity, like one day they might be our colleague might be a certain way, and we think, oh my goodness, they've really shown their true colors there. That's really what they think about things. It's probably not. It's probably a part of them that's reacting in that way because of something vulnerable that's been triggered that day. It absolutely doesn't represent what they really think or really feel. It's just a part of them that we need to hold with compassion and go to that curiosity, isn't it? So we want to think about who are the people that hold us up, have that commitment to belonging and collective care practices, prioritize well-being as an ethical responsibility, really. It's not something that we go away and do so that we come back refreshed. It's something that we're doing all of the time. It's not a to-do list, is it? It's just a way of relating, a way of interacting with ourselves, with other people. And therefore, how do we create the conditions for resilience and not exhaustion? That's me. Thanks, Pete. Oh, it's not. It's final thoughts. I think it speaks for itself, doesn't it? We're not meant to carry this work alone. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. Really appreciate it. I always enjoy. I've sat in on many of your training sessions and always enjoy listening. It's always an opportunity for a bit of self-reflection on my relationship with work. So thank you. Really appreciate working with you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and invite Phil Richardson, who is Deputy Director. I nearly gave you a promotion there, Phil. Deputy Director of Operations for Platform. Phil, can I ask you, in the time that we've got about 20-25 minutes before we take a break. It'd be really interesting to hear about the content. Just gives a bit of context first off about the work that you do within Platform and kind of the stuff that you're seeing each day.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Hello, everyone. So my role, I run the crisis prevention and homes, which basically is our adult kind of type services over South Wales. So mental health people, we're dealing with people that are in pain and distress, and we offer a range of services from crisis houses, which are alternatives to hospitalisation at a person's point of crisis, through to supported housing, where we work where the person lives and we're providing homes as well as the support, and floating support type contracts as well. So trying to support people with their well-being in their own homes. So I run a small team under me, 4 people, and then they have a couple of layers where they ultimately there's frontline teams delivering the support. So that's what I do. So working within systems, especially around housing and homelessness, that creates a lot of the funding for some of the contracts that we do. We mainly deliver public sector contracts through local authorities or health boards. So dealing with mental health systems, dealing with lots of colleagues in NHS, in various different teams, but also dealing with local authorities, housing support grant teams, housing teams, homeless teams, but also coming into contact with a variety of different systems, from criminal justice, education, you name it, we're coming into contact with it. So yeah, part of a small part of a jigsaw that's quite wide. If you imagine a person, they've got lots of different things going on in their lives, and we play a role kind of linking with lots of people within that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Phil. And just, you've mentioned all of those systems playing out. I would imagine that all of those systems are all under extraordinary pressure, even in their own silo of the work that they're attempting to do. How does that feel in kind of the work you do? How do you even cope with that, I guess, is
Yes.
the brunt of the question.
Oh, no, there's a leading question, eh, Pete? Oh, goodness me. Yeah, it's quite frustrating. So, on a kind of a transactional basis, it can be really frustrating when we're working with a person, or maybe we're housing that person and we can see what they need, and we're trying to link other organizations in to coordinate that support journey, but they're in overwhelm often, their lack of resources, and don't have maybe the ability to be able to do what they need to do to avoid a bad result for that individual. So yeah, you do see a lot of kind of like frustration with systems. We use the phrase helping systems, and often those helping systems don't actually help. And often we're dealing with people that can't navigate those systems, and actually they don't just help, they can hurt the person. And that's really, really hard then to kind of work within, because that creates a lot of different emotions, not just for you, but for the teams that you're supporting. It can be really, really frustrating because there's a lack of efficacy and agency then when you're trying to create that change, but you've got a system that's based on thinking that's flawed often, or was correct at the time of creation, but with all the pressures that we've got in today, it's no longer appropriate.
Yeah. And does it feel difficult to hold, amongst all of those frustrations within all of those systems, there are people sat within them doing their best. And I guess part of the thing that I struggle with sometimes is holding my own compassion for the other people in the chain. When you're frustrated because you want to do the right thing, I guess it's about holding that compassion and thinking about that what Sarah was talking about, that community and the chain. And if we think about the chain of people, is it sometimes difficult because we're not talking about being nice to each other all of the time. This is tough. This is tough
No.
work. How do you hold that compassion for
Yeah.
stuff outside of your control, I guess?
Yeah, my team will tell you I'm full of cliches. So one of my cliches they often hear me say is we're not a sausage factory. And apologies if there's anybody online who is working in a sausage factory. But we're dealing with pain and distress, and some quite severe, significant stuff that people, our frontline caseworkers, pay real living wage. That's what we can afford. But they're dealing sometimes with some really graphic stuff, and it's really, really hard. The work is really hard. One of the other cliches I say is the work feels like, you come in and you jump in straight into a raging river. And, at the end of the day, you hope to crawl out of that raging river. So sometimes it's really, really hard to hold compassion and empathy for colleagues in different sectors. It's only really when you get that moment to properly stand back and come with, one of the things you said, Sarah, about curiosity, which I wrote down and I circled twice, so you can see how important it was for me. It's really hard. Yeah. So you need that curiosity to be able to go, what's going on for them? What's it like for that person? Because just coming in superficially, you get frustration, you get anger, you get kind of like, oh, for goodness sake, why can't they just see things as we're seeing them, and we're seeing a bit of a different picture? So it's really hard. And then you understand actually they're they're timed on visits, their caseloads are sky high, the system's working against them. They experience that same frustration and anger at not being able to do the job that sometimes they would like to do. The system doesn't allow it. So it's not about the individuals at all. You realize actually it's a system thinking issue.
Yeah. And so I guess reflecting on that, the importance of connection and human connection across teams and the effort that you put in behind sitting down to have a cup of coffee with somebody and work out what's really going on and what's really getting in the way is kind of critical in the work that you do.
Yeah. I mean, so I came. So I think there's something about authenticity, being authentic. I think you touched on, Sarah, that's really resonated with me about relationships and that sense of belonging and therefore culture, right? So I joined Platform in 21, sort of when we were going in and out of lockdowns, that funny period. I suppose I'd worked in different sectors before, a lot of pressured sectors, but not within mental health. And I thought I was quite used to pressure, think of myself as quite a resilient chap. And then started working in the sector. And I can remember the time I had a bit of a meltdown. So we were doing something, a session. I was chairing a session with there was various people from senior management and others in the meeting, where I was doing a vision session, and it was really hard because you're working in a system, and I couldn't see. I didn't realize it at the time, but what I realized later was I couldn't see where I needed to point the direction to give people hope and agency. I couldn't see the change because I was too much in it. And it felt quite a despairing place to be. And I had a little bit of a meltdown. I probably wasn't. I probably just sort of rolled my eyes and maybe snapped a pencil or something like that. But it felt like quite a really significant period. So it felt like I was out on my own, and I had a couple of days off after that. And I just felt kind of disconnected from the team. And it was there at the moment that I felt there was a bit of a penny drop moment for me, that the stuff that Sarah says I'd probably heard before, but I hadn't really connected with it in a deep and meaningful way. So all that sort of stuff, it made sense to me, but the penny hadn't dropped and I wasn't connected properly to it. And it was at that point where maybe it took me to go to that dark place where I felt out on a limb, that then I could come back and make sense. And then I put the stuff around me to help support me. So one of the key things that I do is take external clinical supervision. And that helps me make sense of my feelings and helps me process stuff. And that's really, really important for me. Because I think in my role, what I was seeing my role as is being there to hold others. And it was that sense of, I think you said, Sarah, about giving, and I was just giving. And I thought, well, I'm strong enough to be able to do that. And it took that for me to realize, actually, that's a bad strategy to adopt. The relationships, coming on to the relationships, they are everything. And I think I used to think I could do relationships brilliantly in my previous roles, because I got on with everyone, and that we had some good discussions, but actually the quality of the relationship probably wasn't as deep as I would have as it needed to be. So one thing, for example, we encourage emotional literacy. We talk about the circle of security and being out on circles and going having adventures, and then feeling out on the circle. How does it feel when you're isolated, and how do you come back in? How can we help make sense of those feelings and process those feelings? Often I have conversations with teams about having difficult conversations. So not the difficult conversation, but how we're going to manage that. Every relationship will have a rupture within work, and ruptures don't necessarily mean to be fisticuffs and storming out the room, but it can be kind of like, sometimes it's unspoken ruptures and you're just feeling it in the pit of your stomach. I think it's important to be able to discuss that, name that, and then be able to repair that. And that's what we do a lot of, is try and give the tools to people to recognize when there's ruptures, but also the tools to be able to put that back together again.
Brilliant. Thanks, Phil. I think what was interesting, the bit that jumped out to me from Sarah's kind of conversation this morning was the need or the benefit of predictability and routines. And I'm guessing, much like my own role, you'd like to start the week with that's predictable and has a planned routine ahead of it on a Monday, but 10 o'clock on a Monday, the whole thing has changed. How do you deal with that unpredictability and stuff? What keeps you going through that?
Yeah. The irony of me being asked
Yeah.
onto this is not lost on me. Clinging on for dear life, coffee and chaos.
Yeah.
Well, what we did, you'll know, Pete. Something I definitely recommend if if you feel that your relationships are of a good, solid enough basis. Definitely an exercise that I would encourage, which is quite a simple exercise to do. We were set, weren't we, Pete, with the senior management team, a couple of scenarios to go and think about. And one is you on a good day, what's going on, what are the conditions, what's happening, talk us through that day. And then we were given the alternative of the scenario 2 to come along with is you got your day planned out, but it all goes wrong, and what's going on for you there. And if you can be really honest and know that what you're going to be said is going to be held and heard and not be judged and taken to heart, it's a really, really, really powerful exercise to do. And we're repeating that with other people within the organization. Yeah, there is definitely an unpredictability there, and that is really, really hard to deal with at times. There's no certainty. It feels sometimes even worse than that. Sometimes there's a lack of agency and a lack of direction. So yeah, we try and build in opportunities for people to have safe spaces to talk about them, whether it's reflective practice, whether it's clinical supervision, whether it's just the team getting together for a coffee and a chat and encouraging that open, honest, kind of authentic self to come to the fore. That's really how we try and deal with that, because you can't tame the unpredictability of the work. It goes with the work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's really interesting. You mentioned the benefits of supervision, and I had never experienced supervision before coming to Platform, and it was kind of hinted, oh, maybe you should try this, as I was crying into my cornflakes. And actually, the benefit of having a a regular space. I used to do it on a monthly basis. I now do it on a 3-month basis, basically because I was worrying about I had nothing to say in my monthly one. So
Yeah.
it was kind of like what's appropriate there. But it's really interesting. I've noticed, particularly in the last, I'd say, a year, a big uptick in our supervision services being taken up by charities, by schools. So we've had a number of schools make inquiries about how to support senior leadership team within schools, which is really interesting. Another kind of environment that's under huge pressure at the moment. And then people like the ambulance service, fire service as well, recognizing, I think, in organizations where we care for others, and the lens has always been on caring for the people that we serve, and quite rightly, creating the conditions is about caring for us as well. And it's really encouraging to see the number of inquiries we get through on we'd like to find out more about supervision, or we'd like to find out more about reflective practice, and we've co-written some work with North around how to run reflective practice sessions that we offer training on as well, to organizations, to try and create that. But this is not easy work. This is not going on a training course and then going, oh, you fixed it. We can now create a wellbeing environment. It's going to be fabulous. This is about years of work, and Platform is still, I think, still in the midst of trying to work out what it means to us as an organization. And the training that we offer doesn't go, this will work for you as another organization. It kind of discusses, it will be different to every organization, and every office in an organization will feel different. So your reflection on the benefit of that, and hopefully the benefit to your team because you're in a more regulated place, is really valuable.
Yeah.
Sarah, can I invite you back in just to reflect on the reflections in typical reflective practice style? Let's all reflect on each other. Any
Sure, yeah,
thoughts?
thank you. I'm just slightly laughing at the coffee and chaos comment, Phil, but I think that's also recognizing that I have a part of me that is called Greg, who likes to go to Greg's for donuts if things are hard. And that sometimes we need that, and that is partly about knowing each other as well, isn't it? Like sometimes it's about going, yeah, like, is this what you need right now? Yes, it is. Thank you very much. And then getting that for your colleagues, whatever. But yeah, also what you mentioned, Phil, about I think it was really generous of you to share that kind of more vulnerable moment for you about, I imagined you like with the flip chart and trying to do this session, but really getting in touch with the part of you that was like feeling despair, because that part of us has something really valuable, isn't it? It's a part that we often think, oh, I wish I didn't feel like that, but that part had something really valuable to tell you about what it wasn't possible to change, or what wasn't possible that you wanted to happen or knew that needed to happen but couldn't. So to be able to like kind of lean into that and recognize it is amazing. And that's the compassion for me, is like all of the parts of us that we would maybe start to feel a bit ashamed of that, but actually going, there's something valuable in it, in what it's trying to tell us. Like this feeling, however uncomfortable it is telling me something important. Yeah. So that, and I agree with Pete about what you say about that, need for a chance to reflect, and supervision being that. And yeah, also you having a part that worries about what to not to say. That's also to bring to supervision, Pete.
Yeah,
Fab.
I couldn't operate. Now I know I couldn't operate. I couldn't do this job without my clinical supervision that I get. I get that, I think, about every month or every 6 weeks. And it took me going to that dark place to be able to recognize and reach out for that, because I thought, well,
Yeah.
I don't really need it. That's not something that I need. I suppose we're all different, and I suppose what you've got to ask yourself is, where's your psychological safety coming from?
Yeah.
And that really helps me. So I get that externally, unconnected to Platfform, and it helps me, I suppose, just because I was feeling quite isolated. It felt like a lack of peer support at the time. Things have changed since then, and maybe the conditions weren't right. But I suppose one of the most toxic things I had going on was the guilt, and a lot of people in this sector will feel that guilt, and that kind of like, oh well, there I can see my colleagues are suffering. I need to work harder, double down, or whatever it may be, and become better in some way. The guilt was kind of really chewing me up, and having somebody external to talk that through with, to make sense of. Really helps me overcome that, because guilt is probably one of the most toxic emotions out there, right? So yeah, that was something that was really, really valuable to me.
Fabulous. Thank you, Phil, and thank you, Sarah. Just to kind of summarize what I'm kind of hearing, and it ties in with our message and all the stuff that Platform Wellbeing is developing, is that our approach to well-being, particularly within organizations, but also outside of organizations, shouldn't be about that. So, there's a commodified well-being industry out there that tells you about self-care, and if you do this self-care, and if we go and do yoga, or if organizations lay on pizza, and I've seen some comments about Fun Day Friday at Greg's as that bonding thing. But if that's the tick box to thinking that well-being sorted, then I think it's more cultural. We're promoting an approach to well-being that is community-based, that is inclusive of everybody, rather than the delegating to individuals to hold of the whole responsibility, when it is all of our responsibility, and particularly leaders, in creating that culture and creating that response to when the hard stuff happens and when we feel distressed, particularly in the work that a lot of people in this space are doing. I really appreciate working with both Sarah and Phil. For Phil, we don't spend enough time together at the Skizzler because I keep cancelling on you.
Story of my life, Pete.
Yeah, I know. I really appreciate your time. What we're going to do now is just take a 10-minute break to people to go to the toilet and have a drink, have a coffee or something. For those of you that want to come back into a conversation, we're going to open up the floor for questions to both Sarah and Phil, who've both agreed to stay on for the second half of the session. We'll see where that takes us. If there's lots of questions, then we can go for the full hour. If we've got a few questions or reflections, that's fine. We'll take a natural pause. There'll be a hard stop at 11:30, but we'll see where it takes us. So can I invite you? Everybody's cameras off apart from speakers at the moment. Invite you to go off and come back at 25 to 11, and we will kick off a bit of a conversation, a bit of a reflection.